All right. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers. Today we have 3 of our top data experts with us at MDR. We have Div Kasadia. He's our head of technology at MDR, and he has 20 years of experience leading technology and business transformation teams at both Fortune 500 companies as well as startups. Prior to MDR, he was the CTO at Capify. We also have Ann Godo. She's our data products manager. And Ann's been at MDR for, believe it or not, almost 30 years. She has experience in a wide variety of roles, all revolving around data, including leading the development of our comprehensive education database of over 7 million educators. Her longtime passion for helping customers see the value in high-quality data makes her a great fit for her current role. And lastly, we have Dave Clement. You might have heard him speak on some of our other webinars recently. He's our digital marketing director at MDR, and Dave has about 20 years of experience in all areas of marketing, business development, operations, advertising, and he's been at MDR for almost 3 years. In his current role, he works directly with a lot of our customers on optimizing their digital marketing campaigns. So Div is going to kick it off talking about the data revolution and all the things that you should be thinking about to be successful in what's been called the 4th industrial revolution. And then Ann will be talking about some common data quality pitfalls that we're seeing with our customers and also winning solutions for managing data integration. And then Dave will tie it all together for us at the end and talk a little bit about how to use your data for marketing automation. All right, and with that, I'll hand it over to Div.
Thanks, Marta. Hi, everyone, this is Div. Let me kick it off with basically introducing what we call data in our modern context. Now, data used to be just general representation of all things physical, behavioral, personal, financial, and we've kind of started compiling everything into books and all other formats of knowledge. And in a modern context, data has become nothing but reflection of all physical or behavioral or personal, all other attributes that we see in the real world. So data to me is just a digital reflection of our universe. So as we go along, basically we've seen the function of data basically evolving from just as kind of like, can we go to the next? Thank you. So we kind of started extracting and utilizing data for better decision making in order to short kind of get to decisions pretty quickly compared to our manual processing. So everybody's aware of this data to information to knowledge to wisdom type of pyramid that is very popular. And U.S. Army came up with this different variation of it, which is a lot more kind of how the data evolves more into information that we could utilize towards making better decisions, making it more from information, applying more cognition to it and generating knowledge that we all can share and utilize, and applying judgment and context on top of it to come up with more of a wisdom that we can, and along the path of from data to wisdom, I think we continue to reduce the risk and continue our focus on what's most value added in that sense. So coming back to the next generation of data, so in this journey of data, from data to wisdom, I think we are in the next stage of the revolution. Now, this totally new revolution is built on top of what we've built so far, and it's popularly coined in terms of 4th industrial revolution. And what kind of generates this, what drives this current revolution is a completely different energy. So as we know, first industrial revolution was driven by steam as the energy. Second one was driven by electricity, where we had a lot more devices and automation was driven by electricity. And third one was raw computing power that generated sheer amount of devices and enabled tremendous amount of automation across the world. And of course, we see the latest globalization was driven by that rise of computing. So, but we are looking at the fourth generation of industrial revolution, and as it's popularly kind of, coined, data is the energy of the fourth generation industrial revolution. So majority of artificial intelligence, machine learning, the new robotics sessions will be driven by data, and data is going to be the energy of this particular change. So jumping onto looking at the sheer volume of data, it's predicted by 2025, 90% of population will have some or the other form of smartphones. That's like close to 4 to 5 billion people having ability to generate data. Going to the next one, it's also predicted 90% of the people will have unlimited storage. And what that's going to do is generate tremendous amount of data, both at the personal as well as platforms like LinkedIn and Facebooks and WhatsApps of the world will have sheer amount of data that they will have will be mind-boggling, if anything. So we are looking at the challenge in terms of the scale of data. And as we go along, I think we all are aware of something called industrial IoT devices, like, Internet of Things. So these are smart sensors with ability to connect to internet and compile as much data as they can. We've seen self-driving cars driven by these sensors. We've seen medical and wearable sensors. We've seen agricultural devices. We've seen energy generating devices. So there are paradigms like smart cities that are completely driven by ability to generate that data, process that data, and react on that data. So by 2025, it's predicted we may have about 1 trillion sensors on internet generating all kinds of data. Jumping on to the next one, we not only have the textual data in our old understanding was a lot more textual, relational databases like two-dimensional tables, etc. Data in our modern context has become images, videos, streams, and we have hundreds of different ways or types of varieties of data that we can't even fathom or process or understand without applying some sort of intelligence on top of it. So the nature of data has changed from textual, more automatable, processable data to a lot more varied type of data. So that's another challenge. And can you go to the next one, please? So looking at the sheer volume of the data is different. So these are the classic 3 V's of the data challenges in modern context. We have sheer volume of the data that's different. Also, the speed of data capture is much significant compared to what we had before. It's been said that 90% of data that we have right now was generated in the last 2 years, all formats of the data. So at this pace, we will be like, we have this exponential curve of data growth and speed as it comes towards us. We also have a variety of data, as we said. There is, Facebook said they are doing close to like 900 million photo uploads every day. They are doing about 700,000 live streaming today, and that's not even like, completely scaled up. So we are going to see a lot more of these varieties of data coming at us. How do we prepare ourselves in this current context? Most of us are still living in flat file exchanges and passing tokens back and forth, or few data elements back and forth. We live in that universe, and how do we prepare ourselves in this data chaos, if you were to? So there are a few things we have to be mindful in the modern context, and so the very first thing we have to do is contextualize data. We all are swimming in the data now. We will be in that big ocean of data where we won't know what to do with it unless we know how to process it, how to apply it to our own use cases. Majority of companies cannot come up with their inventory of data. They cannot put their context around what data is used where and how is it manipulated, and kind of, what is that data's journey basically across your application and use cases. There is no formal way of evaluating data, even from pure, scoring of data. Like lead scoring is a classic example, but even that's not very prevalent. And now we're talking next generation where we have 100-fold data, and we still don't know how to evaluate what's usable, what's not usable, what's applicable, and what we can get rid of. Similar things apply to quality of data, monetary evaluation, accuracy of data, even taxonomy of data, how it applies to our current context. Like I said, if everything gets digitized in the world, you have to determine what is relevant data to you. And I think the question has been flipped. We are not looking for data out there in the world that applies to us. We have to kind of weed out the data we don't need. So I think it's a different problem altogether. There's tremendous amount of automation needed on top of this data. Most of us have not automated our data flows. We have not automated our analysis of data. We haven't determined what algorithms can utilize this data into the next level. So we all have heard about AI, ML, and deep learning, machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence. We have to start exploring these automation and tools. As the scale of data increases, only these tools will be able to look at the data. There's no way a person can analyze this data. The other biggest challenge is protecting this data. As more and more data is compiled out there in the world, privacy of the data, security of that data, and compliance with regulations as they come up, like GDPR, PII, and I would expect some other regulations will show up in U.S. pretty soon. So how ready are we, and what are the measures we take in protecting that data? So those are some of the challenges we have to look into. Like I said, most of us have not been measuring the data or quality of data, so we have to kind of start measuring all things data as well. How much data we have, what's the value of data, what pieces of data yields what kind of results. So a lot of businesses or platform businesses like LinkedIn and are evaluated against the amount of data they've collected. And a lot of businesses are devaluated because they've had data breaches, et cetera, and they've been punished because of that. So that kind of measurement of data as well as protection of data affects the business bottom line. Also, accountability internally. Data itself was supposed to be a byproduct of all the processes, or just a means to get to the results. But as we have more regulations on top of the data, I think there needs to be a lot more governance or thought process in terms of what compliance issues are along with the data. There's ownership of data altogether, so there is a chief data officer coming up along with chief financial officers and chief technology officers. So in fact, as part of GDPR, there is something called chief data protection officer that's built into it for large size companies. So there will be a lot more accountability around data. Biggest challenge in my thinking, my thought process is the training. Most of us are not trained in terms of data and analysis skills. We still have to build our capabilities in terms of how we handle the raw data as well as the new tools that handle data. So be it algorithms or AI or machine learning type of things. So we don't even have data-driven culture, so that's something we need to figure out how we can incorporate that into our thought process. So, and kind of like a final thought, we have to look at data as beyond data, and we have to see what data represents rather than data as a raw, like, you know, digital data, that's all. So I think we have to start looking at people and objects and things, what it represents. So and in summary, actually, we could say data will be crucial, but it'll be commoditized. There'll be a lot more of data, and it'll be extremely crucial for most of the business, yet identifying what's good and bad, and I think that will determine the success of how you utilize the data. It'll be bigger, faster, and will demand a lot more context around everything. It has to be action by automation, and we won't be able to do everything just by manual type of work. It will be stolen, it will be regulated, and we may not like these things, but that's exactly what's going to happen, and data mismanagement will have consequences, so we have to be mindful of that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ann.
Thanks, Div. Hi, this is Ann Godo, and I'm going to talk a little bit about data quality. Div's done a great job at sort of setting the stage of how to think about data, not only today, but moving into the future and how much it impacts all of our lives. I'm going to talk a little bit more on the sort of here and now of data and how you manage your data currently and what you can do to take action now. So what's the most important thing in achieving data quality, and how do you define data quality? Different people look at it as individual points. So accuracy. Some people will consider that is each data point that you have accurate. Completeness. Do you have every data point on each record, or only partial, gaps filled, not a phone number, not an email address? Currency, how frequently is this data updated? How often are you confirming the data that you have? Consistency, are you using the same rules in applying data, who you take into your data set and who you don't? Abbreviations that are used in data. Security, do you have your data in a place that gives access to the people who need it, but also protect it from outside sources being able to come in? Div gave us a lot of points to think on in his portion. And finally, sustainability. When you bring data into your data repository, how are you going to continue to ensure that it maintains quality? So I've worked at MDR, as Marta said in the beginning, over 30 years, and have been working with data collection and currently work a lot with customers on integration needs and how they can make best use of the data that MDR provides. And I hear many things about pitfalls that customers have when looking at data quality. One of the things I hear most commonly is people really focus on getting in new data. So they bring in new records, they want to know those new leads, but they're not spending enough time thinking about the data that's already in their data set that may be eroding and may not be keeping pace. There's a consistent fear of removing or inactivating data, that people love to add new data in, but they're always hesitant to remove anything out. And not that you should blindly go and take data out of your database, but especially for things like email addresses, you need to be sure to remove hard bounces. All of that impacts your reputation. Data overlay, when data differs, so you have data in your data repository, you get another source of data in that has like data fields, yet the values conflict. What do you do? How do you know what data to keep? How do you know what data to get rid of? Which data should take precedence? not understanding all of your data sources. Many customers will take data from a variety of sources into their repository, but once they come in, have no idea where that data was sourced from, not knowing then when they're going to be able to update that data record. Next. Duplication. Another huge issue when integrating in, making sure that you're not adding what you think are new records, but they really already exist in your data repository. And finally, I hear lack of ownership. Probably most importantly is that no one is governing, no one's keeping watch. So I'm going to drill into some of the solutions that you can address to take action on some of the things I just discussed. So data governance is key and pinnacle in data quality. Too many times there are multiple constituents who all have an interest in data, but maybe different goals, different plans, and there might be multiple repositories that people are using that carry similar but not the same data. The most important thing that I can recommend that any company do that's trying to address quality issues is to set up ownership for evaluation of the data that you currently have, of creating rules in assessing quality of data, and in assessing new sources that are coming in. This can be a cross-functional cross-departmental team. Many times you'll have a marketing team, a sales team, and a data ops team all have different issues and concerns with how the data is managed. Having a team that has all those voices heard really can help you decide what's the best repository, what's the best workflow for your data, where should the point of truth be, and how does that point of truth then feed into your other repositories, feed your other needs. Next, understanding your data sources. Do you know where your data comes from? So everybody has data starting in their database. To be able to then accentuate that and be able to add on to it, you need to know where that data source is coming from. If you're using a third-party provider, do you know the frequency that they update their data? How often can you get refreshes? Are you making a distinction between getting a list, a one-time list of, say, conference attendees that you want to incorporate in your data set, but you're never going to get a refresh on that, to an actual data collector who is in turn feeding into data like MDR provides education data. And you should rank those different sources based on how often you're going to get updating, what kind of confidence you have in the data, what kind of completeness, all those data quality issues that I first talked about, to be able to know how you should rank the quality of each type of data source that's coming in. Source and date tracking. Creating source management process to track all your data sources. Div talked about this in the beginning part of the presentation. Understanding what data is coming from where and what is the potential of refreshing of that data. Date stamping, records, or even data points if you use multiple sources for data points on a single record, so that you can know when something was last updated and be able to use that as criteria to making data governance rules. And then drive to synthesize your data sources to, very few places have just a single repository for data. You could have a CRM, you could have a marketing automation, you've got a SQL analytic database or a BI Power that you're trying to feed, all different sources that you want to have shared data. So drive to make sure that there's communication between systems and that there's ways to keep that going. Again, a single point of truth, figuring out what the mother record is that can feed all the other systems is really important in doing this. Eliminating data duplication. So Probably one of the biggest data frustrations I hear from customers is that they know they have duplication in their data and they don't know what to do about it. This is one of the things that you should invest time and energy into. You're wasting resources by either contacting people multiple times because you aren't even aware that it's the same person in your data set, and you're also potentially putting at risk your reputation in reaching out to these people. Seek resources to match your existing data. There are plenty of services out there that help you with this, that help you find data duplication. So you don't have to do it yourself. There is help out there. Seek a resource that will help you match your existing records as well as potentially match incoming records if you're getting outside data from a data source. Eliminate duplication before it happens. Try to address the potential for duplication before you put it into your data set. Custom data sets and parallel data fields. If you feel that you're struggling with the ability to make that distinction, but you want to get the new data into your data repository quickly, one of the things I've recommended is using either parallel fields for source data or things like custom objects in Salesforce to be able to harbor the data that you're bringing in, but not necessarily overlay your existing data records, and then finding a way to be able to link that data, either common fields, doing a match to see, but being able then to, once it's all in the same platform, being able to then do analytics, do comparison against, and resolve duplication before your actual core records are impacted. And so being able to create the rules once everything's in the same platform can be really helpful. Data integration. So understanding that all your data repositories and the workflows, how they work between them. Where is data being shared? What direction is data flowing? Downstream, upstream. Identifying key fields that can link your data to existing data. So especially when you're getting an outside source, look for key fields, whether your third-party data provider provides a unique identifier, or it could be a government or municipal record, identification number, could be an industry number, anything that can help you align your data. Again, if there isn't an existing number, most services should be able to do some kind of matching for you. And also seek outside mapping tools to update existing records. Look within your own applications for updating opportunities. Look within to see apps that you can get for your repository, or talk to your data partners and see if they can provide this kind of service for you. So kind of in wrapping up, what are the recommendations to ensure quality? First, explore new data sources. Look for ways that you can continue to feed and enhance the data that you have. Look for ways that will give you a broad feel of what your market holds and not just who your current customers are. Keep existing data current as well as adding new leads. You want these sources to be able to help you maintain the quality in what records you already have, as well as adding new records in. For data hygiene, talk to your data partners about available tools that can help you with your hygiene. Things like identifying outdated records, doing duplication matching, merge, purge, things like address cleanse, appending data points on your current customer records, those kinds of things. MDR offers a service like this where we'll bring in customer records and we're able to match that. These are education records that we're able to match against our national education database. And we're able to give customers an idea of where they're matching, what their penetration is in the universe, and even match against records that are no longer active, schools that have closed, or contact names that have left the organization. Being able to give that kind of intelligence back to a customer allows them then to use that as a tool to cleanse their own data. And finally, explore ways to streamline integration. And Div talked about the need to automate processes, whether it's conditions of data comparison or ways to be able to apply new data in. Establish your data flow, how that's going to work. Talk to your partners about APIs. Do they have streamlined ways to access data? MDR has an API tool where you can programmatically go and grab your data, so somebody doesn't have to actually take a step. You can automate it to at midnight on the 15th of every month, go grab the latest data. Many companies have API kind of tools. Or look for an ease-of-use mapping tool. Again, from my perspective, what I know, MDR has a mapping tool, an app that you can install in Salesforce that allows you to specify the account that you want, the object that you want the data to go into as the account object here, and then pick and choose which MDR fields you want to map to Salesforce fields. And at the push of a button, once you get that mapping set up, it will take your data, the MDR data, and go ahead and publish into your Salesforce, inserting new records and updating existing records. So a quick ease-of-use tool that doesn't require a high amount of technical expertise on your part, but with something you can save, repeat, and potentially can help you keep data updated more frequently, get emails updated on a monthly basis and such. And with that, I'm going to pass off to Dave Clement, who's going to talk about marketing automation, so how you can take your data and really have it action for you. Dave?
Awesome. Thanks, Ann. So let's just recap real quick. So Div took some time and spoke to really the state of data, where it is now, where he feels it's going to go, and some predictions for the future in regards to regulation, what's going to happen there. And great presentation as far as, you know, with the wealth of information that most people don't have, 30 years working with our clients, seeing where their challenges are, and some ways for you guys to avoid it. And when I heard that we were doing this webinar, I was really excited, and this is why. And I was really excited to do the segment on marketing automation. I was very lucky. Marta, with their great intro, you know, gave all our backgrounds, and, you know, I've been doing online marketing for about 20 years now. Marta nicely pointed out to me yesterday I was getting old, which is awesome. And I was openly doing marketing automation before we even called it marketing automation. You know, back in the day, it was really setting up autoresponders on your email, and then if somebody opened up X amount of emails, you handed it over to a salesperson. You know, and it's really come a long way since then. I was also very lucky. For about 4 years, I was working as a consultant, and I was a very early adopter of off-the-shelf marketing automation tools. You know, insert popular name here for marketing automation tools. And that led me to working with some very large known companies who are spending a ton of money on marketing automation. And all of them, to the word, almost said to me in meetings, we just spent a ton of money on marketing automation, and we're using it to send out broadcast emails right now, okay? So to anybody on the call, does that sound familiar, okay? And so my presentation, just a few slides, is really things to be thinking about, so you're getting the best return on investment for not only the data that you're investing in, but also the marketing automation system that you're investing in. So we'll take a little bit of time talking about goals, a little bit of time talking about lead scoring, integration, different segments that you should be thinking about. So without further ado, let's start talking about defining goals and lead scoring. Now, this is a great opportunity. If you're at the point of integrating with marketing automation, thinking about it, or even in the middle of it, it's always a good idea when you make a change like this is to revisit your goals. You know, really think about, you know, so many companies, and we're all guilty of this. When was the last time you really took a look at your goals and thought about why are you doing this, what do you want to be happening, but also, you know, why are you making this investment? And that really leads into the next point. The real strong suit about marketing automation is that you can keep on pulling people through the filter in an automated way. So if somebody doesn't hit that point where you want them to be, you can keep them at the very top of that funnel and try other other sources of advertising, whether that be email, whether that be advertising, whether that be social, whether that be a phone call from a representative of your company. But you can do that in an automated fashion, so it's all working together. So you can really define. This is what I like to call the magic wand type of scenario, where you can define, hey, what is a perfect lead? What is a perfect customer? And what actions do they have to take for us then to take this next action? Okay, that's the strength of marketing automation. And if you're investing heavily in marketing automation and not doing that, you're wasting your money, ultimately. Okay, next point. And this actually goes back to what Ann was saying in regards to deciding on what your point of truth is and the repositories for your data. All of this needs to be a collaborative effort, okay? So ultimately, if you're doing marketing automation, it's typically to generate sales, ultimately, and also to generate leads. Well, if the marketing team and the sales team are not on the same page on what a valuable lead is, it really doesn't matter. Okay, so it needs to be a collaborative effort when you're really thinking about the journeys you're going to be sending these prospects, leads, existing customers through. And then the final point here is that it needs to be evaluated and adjustment over time, really coming full circle. You know, the first point was, hey, revisit your goals. But also, you never really stop evaluating your goals. Because you might have thought, once again, in that magic wand stage of all this, going, hey, this is the perfect lead. But then after a couple months or a couple weeks, you're finding that maybe it's completely something else. And that's not being wrong, okay? And I think a lot of people personally think that they make this decision, and if it's not that, they're wrong. No, you're not wrong. You have more data now, so you can make a better informed decision and adjust that. So let's take a little bit of time in talking about lead scoring. So there's really three types of lead scoring criteria that you really need to think about, because this really takes the subjective out of it, where now you're really working on facts. The very first point is that there's explicit type of data. So that's the information you can take right at face value. So the title of the person, geographically where they are, what industry they're in, revenue, lead source, and the list can go on, and those are just some examples. Now, the next type of lead scoring criteria is the implicit data. Now, that's information that's really coming from, you know, the types of actions people in your funnel are taking. So that's website visits, phone calls, downloads, email signups, form completion, and there can be interpretation that happens there. Oh, well, they visited these 3 pages, so that must mean X, okay? Or, you know, our salesperson made 3 phone calls to them, and each phone call was over 5 minutes, you know, so that means Y, okay? So you have the first column explicit where, hey, this is a CMO of this type of company in this type of location, and then it moves into the implicit that had a phone call, had 3 phone calls with our salesperson that were all over 3 minutes, and they actually downloaded a PDF about this product, moving into the implicit, okay? And then the last thing to really think about is negative points, okay? What are things that take the person out of the funnel? Because this is another important aspect, and this is why marketing automation is so powerful, okay? It takes the emotional out of it. If somebody's doing actions that they shouldn't be doing to pull down your funnel, they get taken out of that funnel. Unfortunately, most people are hopeful people. We always hope for the best. So that lead that we've called 20 times and hasn't picked up the phone, well, that 21st time is going to be the time they pick up, and that's going to be $1 million contract, okay? Marketing automation takes that out of it, okay? So if they're taking actions that either disqualifies them or puts them higher up on the funnel, that can all be perfectly tracked. And then you can send the appropriate messages to those folks. Sometimes it's good to serve up, hey, you never want to hear from us again? Let me know, okay? So you're not wasting your resources on it. So part of any marketing automation, you really need to have a tight lead scoring criteria. That's a very important foundation. And once again, it's done in an automated way. So once you set up these different journeys based upon explicit, implicit, and negative attributes, it's not labor intensive. That work happens in the beginning, laying that foundation. So moving on, some other things to consider, okay? And this is actually a big one. And I know it sounds common sense, but it's really always surprising to me how more companies don't really take the time to integrate with what they're already existing, inbound marketing strategy. They look at marketing automation as almost like this new funnel. And it's not a new funnel. It's enhancing what you're already doing, okay? Getting smarter, making more focused, data-driven decisions in an automated fashion. One thing that I was always surprised about when I work with companies, and maybe this sounds familiar to a lot of people on the call here, they have CRM like Salesforce. Let's just use Salesforce as an example because that's a big name that most people recognize. And then they have a marketing automation tool like, I'm not even going to name them, okay? So let's do a promotion to these people in this geography with this job title that are talking to our salespeople, 2 times. So what they do, they go to their Salesforce, look for those criteria, build a list, then download that list from Salesforce, then upload it to whatever system they're using, do the promotion, then download their results, then upload it back into Salesforce, and really handle that data, okay? Beauty part, any marketing automation tool out there, any CRM system out there nowadays, especially with open APIs, can integrate with each other. Going back to what Ann was saying in her previous thing is that flow of data, okay, and really thinking that through and what happens when this call happens and how are those 2 systems talk to each other. If you have invested in a CRM system, if you have invested in a marketing automation system and you do not have them integrated with each other, I highly encourage everyone, when they get off this webinar today, to start looking into that. You will not regret it, okay? Next point. Now, and we've kind of touched upon this in a few different ways, but how can marketing automation enhance your current inbound marketing efforts? How many of you folks on this call are doing email marketing, doing digital advertising, have people making phone calls, maybe doing print, maybe doing direct mail, but they're all working in their own silos. One thing, and this was a big one for me back in another company, and once again, it sounds so common sense now. This was a company that was spending millions upon millions upon millions of dollars on direct mail every single year, and they were extremely successful at it. They were also spending millions upon millions upon millions of dollars on paid online advertising, which I was managing, okay? And they worked in complete different silos. They were both pushing for a sale, but they weren't working with each other. And we found by really just tying the digital advertising, the email, and the direct mail together, and really not changing much of our strategies at all except sharing information. When somebody clicked on that ad and filled out a lead form, and then send out a follow-up email, and then further qualifying, getting them more information, and then once we got more information, sending them out a direct mail piece. Just by marrying those together and not really changing our strategies drastically at all, we were greatly able to improve our profitability and the overall gross revenue as a whole. And the next point, and we kind of talked about this already, really tying them all together, okay? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and here's the, no duh type of moment, but really think about it. Okay, so you've identified your goals, now what? Don't just blast general messages. If you're just going to blast general messages to everybody that's on your list or at high-level segments, you're probably not getting the most bang for your buck from either the data that you're investing in or the tools that you're using. The point of marketing automation, but also heavy investments in data, is to send highly targeted content to specific segments, okay? If you're not doing that, you're really not getting the most bang for your buck at the end of the day, okay? Next point. So what are some segmentation ideas? And this is just to get you going. Now, it all relates to your business at the end of the day, but here's some high-level starting point for segmentation ideas. First off, think about topics or products that they're interested in. You know, what pages are they visiting? You know, how did they come to your site? Really think about that. What stage of the buying process are they currently in, okay? Are they in that information collecting gathering? You can very easily see that by the type of content that they're engaging with, whether that be through an email or ads or the pages that they're visiting on your site, okay? Are they information collecting? Are they further down the funnel and ready to buy something? Are they in that buyer remorse phase? You know, there's a lot of different phases that somebody can be in as far as both pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase. And then another couple of points, we already mentioned what pages they have engaged with on your website, but also think about the different demographic and personal details of the contact in your database, you know, their job title, geography. You know, one thing that we see all the time, you know, because one of the aspects that I manage a lot over here and work with a lot of our clients on is their email marketing. And I know, once again, it sounds very common sense, but the more focused you can get on their personal demographic information, one of the things that we see all the time, which greatly improves open rates on emails, is just popping in geography. You know, just talking about if they're in Georgia, saying, hey, Georgia teachers, is a huge win almost without exception, okay? Next slide, please. And then finally, and this is important, we did a lot of talk about new customers, pulling people through the funnel. Don't forget about your existing customers. Marketing automation is awesome for reaching out to your existing customers. You know, what are you doing as far as retention? You know, if you see people that are navigating around your frequently asked questions page, well, guess what? They probably have a frequently asked question they need answered, okay? Also, and you see this in companies all the time, okay? Nobody talks to the customer until they're 2 weeks away from the renewal date of their contract. You can be having a conversation with your customers throughout the year in an automated fashion, which doesn't add to your workload, but greatly improves your renewal rates. Upsells. If people, once again, are engaging with different content through emails, or whether it be ads, or whether it be content on your site, you know, what's relevant products or services that you can then serve an offering to them. And finally, new offerings. You know, instead of just sending out those batch emails, send highly targeted offerings to a client that are also timely. See, that's the important thing, is timeliness. It's not just good sending out a batch email, hey, we have a new product, everybody in our database, but to those very specific groups based upon their activity that are going to be very interested in that new offering. And I think that's what I got. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Dave and Ann and Div. We have a little bit of time left, just a couple minutes for questions. And we had a few come in. I'll start with one for Div. A couple people are asking about GDPR.
Sure.
I think Div is the best person to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Was there any specific question? Or?
Yeah. So one was, what will be the most crucial impact of GDPR on the U.S.?
There is, again, that's very specific to what kind of business or what kind of data you have. So there's a couple of changes in GDPR compared to previous data privacy and protection laws. I think it's much broader. It includes photographs, and there's a lot more attributes that are classified as a sensitive or personal information. It also includes digital footprints and data that we marketers are very used to, like IP addresses and social handles and everything else. So it's a little bit broader from that standpoint, though it applies only to EU citizens only right now, or companies based in EU, or service providers based in EU. But it also affects everybody who's doing any sort of business with EU subjects. So, for example, we don't sell a lot of data into EU, but, I mean, we don't sell EU data, but we do sell data into EU, and we have a lot of prospects and leads and customers in EU, and we had to kind of go through and take inventory of all of our internal databases to see where the impact is. So biggest challenge is not knowing where exactly we have the data. So this is where knowing where your data is and what kind of impact you may have will depend on your business model. But nonetheless, I think there are some other issues like, we are used to taking these kind of implicit consent with one big legal text. That's not allowed anymore under GDPR type of laws. So it needs to be a lot more explicit, a lot more purpose-driven consents, and I think some of those will be the impact specifically if you're marketing to EU. So you got to have a lot more controls on it. Also, there is impact in terms of data transparency and some sort of giving control back to the people whose data we have in terms of sharing that data, sharing the purpose for that data, sharing any sort of transformation we do with that data, as well as ability to kind of erase that data based on their request. So we don't have those controls specifically across the U.S. market. So we may have to do those if we are dealing with a lot of EU markets. So that depends on how much your business you're doing with EU in the short term. But if something similar to kind of trickle down to U.S., which I personally see as a directionally it'll happen, it may not be as deep, it may not be as kind of, impactful, but the other part of GDPR is there is punity involved with the breaches. But I foresee it'll be more like, speeding tickets type of thing. Not every breach or everybody will be, ticketed, but, there will be a lot more enforcement and a lot more. So there is a privacy by default and privacy by design as a motto of GDPR type of regulation. So we might see a lot more of emphasis or privacy mindedness if you were to, but we'll see what kind of regulatory impact we may have or on the controls. So I know it's very generic, but we all are awaiting the real hammer to drop. So.
All right, thanks, Div. I know we're just about out of time here. I'll do one more question. We understand if people have to drop off, no worries. We've had another question that I'll give to Anne. Just if you could talk a little more, give a little more detail about how our Salesforce connector integrates with MDR's database.
Sure, it's actually the reverse. MDR's database integrates with your Salesforce. So it's a Salesforce app that you can install in your Salesforce that what it gives you is a mapping tool to be able to take MDR's data points and map them to your Salesforce data points, and literally at the push of a button be able to then update existing records on those data points and insert new records into the data points. So it's an ease of use tool for Salesforce users who want to integrate education information into their Salesforce that can go into accounts and contacts so that you can both keep updated and enhance your existing records as well as add and insert new schools, new educators.
All right, great. Thanks, Anne. All right, we're going to wrap up. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. Going to leave up on the screen for a minute just our upcoming webinars. You can go to that link down in the bottom right-hand of the screen to see the full list, and as soon as registration opens up for all of these, you'll be able to access it right from that link. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you all again for joining. Thanks to our speakers, and keep an eye out on your inbox for the link to the recording in the slides. And we did have a few other questions come in that, sorry we didn't get to everybody, but if we'll be reaching out directly to you guys with any answers, and also feel free to contact any of us at any of the email addresses or phone number right up on the screen. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.